when is a pastor ready to take on Romans? What would you say? Maybe maybe this is a difficult question, but when would you encourage a pastor and say, no, I think you're in a place where taking on Romans will be a helpful thing for the church?
I think there may be a difference between encouraging our people to study Romans and helping them to do that in different ways, and on the other hand, deciding to preach through Romans. It's kind of interesting, really, isn't it, to think about great preachers who have not rushed into preaching Romans. And I do believe if it is going to make a real impress through an individual's ministry in a congregation, it shouldn't be too early. I think it's in the volume on Romans 6 that Dr. Lloyd Jones tells the story of some famous preacher coming into his vestry and saying, when are you going to preach on Romans? And he said, when I understand Romans chapter 6. And so, he was a very, very mature minister in a congregation that had become accustomed to his ministry. And I think that's part of the reason it was a very special time for the believers who came to Westminster Chapel on Friday night. Donald Gray Barnhouse did the same thing in Philadelphia, long before my time. But I think he had been there quite a season. James Boyce, did the same thing. John Piper, I think, I read somewhere that John Piper said that he had asked the question, when is the right time to preach Romans, and felt that in an extended ministry he ought to do it. But there should be a time. If it's going to be what I think I felt this when I preached through Romans, a sufficiently loving bond between me and the congregation, and between the congregation and me, that we could feel we were setting out on an expedition together to climb, in a way, the highest mountain in the New Testament. And so I think I would say that Romans is likely to make its most fruitful impact. It's likely to make its most fruitful impact on us as a congregation of people, if that kind of bond is already in place, and that there is a kind of relationship in which you feel that you're a kind of mountain guide who has never actually made this. You've made this ascent in your mind frequently and privately and on your own, but you're taking a whole group of people with you. And in that sense, it's a special moment in a congregation's life, I think. But as I say, I think that's a different thing from encouraging people to become familiar with it, which we all ought to do.
Yes.